Hey guys, welcome back. This is just a quick video of the things that you should be prepared for when you're a newbie to riding motorcycles, particularly if you're middle-aged and it's the first time you're getting on a bike, or it's the first time you're getting on a bike for a very long time. And I'm going to list the top 10 things that kind of scared the hell out of me, that I expected some of them, but not all of them. I didn't expect to be as nervous or scared as I was. All right, so they're in no particular order. I'm just going to go from what I remember off the top of my head. So the number one thing, or the first thing, if you like, that caught me off guard was the wind. All right, because when I first started riding, you're going at slow speeds. I don't think I went over like 50 or 60 Ks an hour for quite a while, until I got very comfortable on the bike. And I started by doing short trips. So I wasn't really used to getting buffeted around with the wind. And it wasn't until sort of after getting my L plates or learner's permit, if you like, in Australia, equivalent to whatever you've got overseas, that I started going on longer trips and hitting like the higher speed roads, like 70, 80 Ks an hour. You start to notice the wind, and those type of roads, they're usually open. There's not as many buildings around. If you're in Sydney, General Holmes Drive, South Dowling, those kind of roads, when I first did them, I was really nervous, right? Because the wind would just grab the bike and would shift me around, because I wasn't used to accommodating for it. When you get your license, they don't teach you that. They don't get you up to that speed. You do go on the road, but you don't get up to that speed, and you generally around buildings. They don't get you out onto like higher speed roads. So the wind is a big thing, right? So if you're scared of the wind, it's normal. You just get used to it. Like I'm riding the speed limit on the freeway now with no windshield on naked bikes, and I'm totally used to it. It is something that you have to condition yourself for. The number two thing is the speed of motorcycle. When I say the speed, I'm talking about the instant acceleration. Yeah, there's no, depending on what bike you get, particularly fuel injected bikes, 650 and up, 600cc and up, even 500cc, it's instant throttle response, it's instant acceleration. So that took a bit of getting used to, yeah. And so I'll tell you, my first bike that I rode was a DR650, Suzuki DR650. Any rider will tell you it's not the quickest bike out there. It's definitely not the slowest, but it's definitely not the quickest. And I very rarely, and it does have tool gearing, I very rarely got out of third gear, because I very rarely got out of second gear when I first started, actually, because it's such a tall gearing, and you take off, you feel like a rocket. So there's a bit of getting used to shifting your weight, keeping your weight balanced, neutral, forward, however you want to ride, and just preparing for that instant acceleration. Now I ride much faster bikes, much more sensitive throttle, and you do get used to it. It's one of those things that you get used to. But when you first start, no matter what motorcycle you've got, it's still got more power than your legs. And the last bike you rode was a push bike, yeah? So unless you've ridden dirt bikes, or you're one of those dudes that grew up on dirt bikes, look out for the instant acceleration. The third thing I want to talk about is the feeling of being exposed, yeah? Especially if you're kind of like my age and getting your license, or you're pushing 50 and you're getting your license. You've been in a car for like 30 years. You're so used to being in that protective suit of armor, that protective bubble, traveling at speed, that you take it for granted. Yeah. When you do that on a motorcycle, you feel like you're going way faster. If you're doing 60, 70, 80, when you're learners or newbie, you're doing 90, that feels like you're going much faster than 90 does in a car because you're so exposed. Yes, you feel the wind, but even without the wind, like you feel weird, like there should be something around you. Now, it does depend on the bike you choose to ride. I know here in Australia, you're not riding a big bike when you're a newbie. You're riding up to 650, and yeah, I've got a 650 cruiser. There's nothing around you. There's not much around you. All those bikes around the 650 mark. Yeah, on a sports bike, you've got a bit of fairings, and it does feel a bit different. But are you going to get into a sports bike for your first bike if you're turning 50? It's not likely. So yeah, you do feel exposed. So that's that one. The next thing I want to talk about, the next one on the list, number 4, I guess, is cars scare the hell out of you. They come too close to you. They stop and they don't think about getting hit from behind. When you do, you don't want to get hit from behind. You're trained not to. Hopefully you're trained well, and you avoid putting yourself in situations where someone will run up the back of you. Cars don't think about you. Yeah, you've got to pretend they don't see you. I pretend everything doesn't see me. Yeah, and even if I'm looking in that person's eyes, what they train you to do, look in the person's eyes, that doesn't work for me, because some people, there's no one home. They'll still pull out in front of you, even if they're staring right at you, because they're not looking for a motorcycle. So being aware of cars when you first ride is something that's unnerving. Now, I don't remember what that's like, because I'm in and out of cars and filtering through them all the time. But I remember when I was first riding, I wanted to be on the road with nobody else, and I was doing short trips, and the first time I rode in traffic, like sort of bumper to bumper traffic, I was pretty nervous about it. But it's something you get used to. Which brings me to the next point. What else is on the road that scares the hell out of newbie riders is big ass trucks. Now, I'm not talking about your lifted 4-wheel drives. I'm talking about in states you call 18-wheelers, dump trucks, what we call semi-trailers, the big boys. Yeah, and there's a lot of construction going on, and what scares the hell out of me is those dump trucks, man, because you just see those wheels as you're going past them, usually on the freeway or usually on a bigger road, but they're everywhere. And the wheel's as big as you, it's up to your shoulder, and you just don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about what could happen. So even being next to them, I don't like to be, I just got a speeding ticket that I'm going to fight in court, because I was on the freeway next to a B double, which is a double semi-trailer. It's two trailers hooked together, and I didn't want to be next to those frigging wheels on the freeway, man, in case one of them blows out and shoots rubber at me 100 miles an hour, So I shot past it, right? That's what I'll be saying in court. And you also feel like that even if you're behind them, you get buffeted if you don't have a windshield. It messes with the air, and you get turbulence, and it's just scary. It's just scary. I started riding in an area near Botany, if you know Sydney. There's a lot of container trucks, man. They're coming in and out of the docks all the time. And when you first start riding, it's daunting. And I still give them a wide berth. They don't make me nervous as they used to, but it's something to be aware of. And if you're scared of them, you're not alone. You're just honest. Yeah. So that's trucks. Next thing on the list is rain and ice. And then let's just call it weather conditions. Anything that isn't pleasant riding weather. So there's some people who've been riding like 20 years or something, and they'll tell you they only ride in good weather. Anything else is death on a stick, and I'm like, well, whatever, man. Like, I don't buy a motorcycle just to ride on a perfect day. I don't have any trailer queens. All my bikes get ridden. They're ridden hard. They're ridden all the time. Yeah. One of my jobs is courier, so I'm in 8 hours. Sometimes I'm in on that bike 8 hours in the rain. But when the first time it rained and I was out and I was riding, yeah, it was nerving. It was nervy, you know. I just learned to sort of lean into the corners and that kind of stuff, and then I was really upright. I was like, oh, I want the biggest contact patch on my tire as possible, and I just remember being like really rigid and actually telling myself to just relax and breathe. And yes, the most dangerous time is, they say, is when it's just started raining, light rain, you know, grease and the muck get washed up. Just adjust your riding, yeah, just go slower and give yourself more stopping distance, and, you know, be more aware. Now, ice is something I can't speak about. I know people, and I've spoken to riders from overseas through YouTube, and my hat's off to you. Like, ice is another level. What are you going to do? You hit an ice patch, you hit an ice patch. And it's not something that you can really prepare for. It's yeah, you can ride slower and you can adjust and whatnot, but some of that black ice is it's ice, man. So yeah, my advice is don't ride when it's icy, but if you have to, you have to. But yeah, it's not something that I've come across. There's a couple of places in Australia that, you know, a few hours from where I live, or a couple of hours, that it does get icy. There's mountains, there's whatnot. It does get icy on the roads. They have ice indicators. Just watch the indicators, just slow right down. And just don't go at those times. Just go during warmer times of the day. You know, that's the only advice I can give, because you know, you have to just get used to it. And once you've done it a few times, it just becomes second nature. It's like overcoming any fear. You just get used to it. Which brings me to our next point, which is kind of number 7, is trusting the grip in your tires. So trusting your tires. That was something that took me a while. Like, it's just being in a car for 30 plus years or longer, you know, 35 years, however long I was 30 years, let's say, even just 30 years in a car. You have flat tires, you don't have rounded tires. If you got rounded tires, you got an issue. But you got flat tires and they handle a certain way, so your mind thinks a certain way. So when you switch to a bike, you feel that that's the same way going around a corner. Like, you should go slower, and you should, you know, you should be very upright. Now, on the DR650, that type of riding style suited that bike. My WR450, the same thing. Even my V-Strom. And even all my other bikes, I don't, you know, but my V-Strom actually got me more leaning, a lot more than the other bikes. And then that went onto my WR and went onto my other bikes, because I got used to the lean. I got used to keeping speed up in the corner. You know, I did some research. I studied a bit more. I watched, you know, guys like Fortnite talk about it in depth, and it stuck. And I was like, I just need to trust. And when you first start leaning, that's all you're doing, is trust and trust and trust. My advice is just go at your own pace, man. You don't need knee down. You don't need to be there in a month after riding, not even a year. You do it at your own pace. Just practice leaning a bit more every time, and then it becomes second nature. Yeah. But yeah, it's something that it gets you going, gets you thinking, gets you nervous when you first start. Another thing that kind of, it's funny for me, because I'd consider myself as an average Joe, above average strength. Yeah, like, I've worked out for the last 20 years. I wouldn't say I'm not going to say I'm buff, but I've got a decent amount of strength. And I've also, I've always been a pretty strong guy. I've always worked with my hands. But I'll be honest and say I had a fear the first time I got on my cruiser, or the first time I got on my V-Strom, which is very top heavy. It kind of questioned, was I strong enough, right? And I can only imagine if you're smaller, like my partner, she's half my weight, and she questioned whether she could ride a bike. And I was like, well, you know what? It's only when you're doing something wrong. So I have the luxury of having strength. When I'm doing something wrong, I can muscle the bike a certain way at low speed. But I have dropped my bike at very low speeds a couple of times, until I learned the technique, until I improved my technique. So it's not about strength. It's not about strength. It's about technique. And the smaller you are, I guess, the more skillful you have to be. And that's the same for everything. Same for sports. Yeah. If there's someone short in the NBA, they're damn good, because the only time it really counts is at very low speeds, or parking the bike, or if you've dropped your bike. Yeah. And I can pick all my bikes up easy, but at low speeds, parking the bike, particularly in a hill, or if you're in Sydney and we've got a lot of damn hills around, like pulling up on uneven ground, yeah, I can understand. So, ride a bike that's appropriate for your size and strength, yeah, I guess. Because I have a friend, she rides a Royal Enfield that she dropped a couple of times because her legs were too short on uneven ground. So you have to be far more aware where you're going to pull up on the even ground, where you can put your leg down and put the other leg down. And sometimes you don't think about it, you just go with automatic, and then you go to put your foot down and it's not there, and the bike's leaned over too far, and then boom. Like I said, I'm lucky I could kind of muscle my way out of it, those times that it's happened to me. But big deal. Don't buy a fancy bike. You've dropped your bike. Just buy a bike you won't mind dropping. Pick it up. Learn to ride better, yeah? The next one. When you're first learning, you take in so much information, right? And at best, we can absorb 5 chunks of information in one go. So we can learn 5 things in one go. I don't know how many things they dump on you when you do your riding course, but I'm sure it's more than 5, yeah? But you can absorb 5 chunks of information at one time. And that's scientifically proven. 5 to 7 if you're good. So the question is, am I coordinated enough, right? Because each limb is doing something different. And if you weren't this, the star footy player at school, you question your coordination, yeah? And my advice is start slow. Start introducing everything into your system, yeah? Because we all do things, it's what's called unconscious competent. We all do things at our own learning pace. So start as slow as you can absorb everything. And my advice also there is, don't try and be the best. Don't try and be the best in the class. The difference was in my attitude to when I'd ridden a bike before to now was I dropped the ego. I didn't care if I was the best in class. In a way, I wanted to be like the slowest in the class, because I knew instinctually I'm a fast guy, so I wanted to be the slowest, so I'd be better. So it sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. Be the slowest in your class, be the slowest to learn everything, and when you're on the road, that'll just compound in an unconscious way. So my advice is get on the bike when it's not going, get used to the levers and the throttle and the changing the gears, and then just like they train you to do, push the bike around, get used to the weight of it, push the bike around without going. just do what they train you to do. We're well trained here in Australia, and I'm pretty sure you are too in the States and in other places around the world. And there's some places where you're not that well trained, so you have to do it yourself. You have to do it yourself, yeah, because it will catch up to you. And just get used to the drills that they run. Look it up on YouTube. Look up people that are not just who are popular for doing wheelies and stunts and stuff, but people that actually know what they're talking about when they're riding, and they really care about. The more boring they sound, the better off you're probably going to be listening to them. So just run the drills and you'll get it. Yeah, get the hands, get the feet. However you work, you'll get it. Everyone can get it. Anyone can do it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're 50 years old. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I can't believe I said that. You're not an old dog at 50, right? 50 is just starting another 50 plus years, yeah? So you've got a lot of time to get good at it. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is, it kind of goes with the coordination thing, is will you manage to remember everything? You have a fear of you're kind of like an overwhelm when you first start riding, because you have to think about the actual mechanics of riding the bike. You have to think about the other road users and all the other traffic that I've talked about. And you also have to think about the road rules. Keep looking at your speedo. We have a ton of speed cameras. Are there police around? Road rules. That's a lot of stuff. So if you're brand new to being on the road and you're a kid, I'm talking about someone that hasn't driven before, that's a lot, man. Take your time, get used to it. If you're my age and you've been driving for 30 years, well, you don't have to worry about the road rules and speed cameras. It's second nature. But it's different on a bike, because it's different reaction. You're not just taking your foot off the gas and clutching it with your feet. It's different. You've got to be sure that the way the gears are set up, you have to be ready to go at any time. Yeah. So with the sequential gearbox, you can't just throw it down, and riders will tell me how they do that. But when you're starting out, you don't use all those tricks. Yeah. So it takes a bit more. Just give yourself time, give yourself space. That's it. And I guess those are the top 10 things that scared me. And those are things that if you are a newbie rider or you've been riding for a while and they still scare you, it's totally normal, right? Anyone that tells you it doesn't scare, there's two things. They're either a liar or they're crazy, yeah? Because I know even doing speed on the freeway, I'm doing it well, looking comfortable, but there's a part of me that's nervous, yeah? It's particularly in wet weather. Even though I ride in it all the time. Like I said, sometimes 8 hours a day. So those are the 10 things to be worried about. All you can do is just keep riding. Yeah, just keep riding in small doses, small chunks, build up. I know people that get their license and want to go on a 2-3 hour trip. To me, that's too much. To me, it's crazy. It's kind of like, are you going to be riding for the rest of your life because you're going into a punish zone straight away? Maybe if you're riding with your dad, or you're riding with your family, or you're a family of bikers and all that kind of stuff, I can understand it. But I always follow the adage, how do you eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time. Just bite off little bits at a time. I started by doing, 3, 4, 5, 6 minute trips to the gym and back, then further to the shops and back, and then, doing the car park stuff. To be honest, I didn't actually do much car park stuff. But then, then you venture further out, and then you do a 20-minute trip, and then you do a 30-minute trip, then you're on it for an hour. Once you've passed that hour mark, then do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like I said, the first time I did my career job, 8 hours on the bike, I felt like I'd run a marathon. So, And now I do it pretty easily. I still need to lie down, but it's, you know, you get conditioned to things, yeah? But overall, the number one thing, and this is a bonus things to be prepared for, is that you will always think about, if you're actually not crazy and delusional, you will always be thinking about sort of the worst case scenarios. Unfortunately, that's how they train us. It's like to look out for accidents and not be a part of that. So to avoid the accidents. So you will always have the fear of an accident. Just don't feed it too much. Just use that fear to make smart choices. Yeah? Don't feed it too much, because there's fear everywhere. We don't need to feed that. We don't need to be scared into riding safely if you use common sense. And don't fear dropping your bikes, guys. Just don't get a bike that you're gonna, don't go out and buy the biggest, baddest thing you can if it's your first time on a bike. It's just silly. Unless you got that FU kind of money and you don't care, it's, you know, you're gonna have a cry if you get a $30,000 bike and it's your dream bike and it's your first bike and you keep dropping it because you haven't got that bike balance down pat yet. Just buy something that you can learn on for a year or two and then go get your dream bike, yeah? So if you want to have your dream bike at 50, start riding at 47, 48. I hope this has helped you. I'd love to hear in your comments if you're a more seasoned rider. If I missed something, or if you're a newbie rider and I missed something, I'd love to hear from you. Let's keep the community going. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel like it. Stay safe.